You are now listening to Talk Your Jits podcast.
Welcome back to Talk Your Jits podcast. This podcast is, as the name implies, all about jiu-jitsu. I'm your host, Lamar Smith, and today's guest is a black belt who owns Rush Mixed Martial Arts, one located in Bernardsville, New Jersey, and the other in Morristown, New Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Leonardo.
Hey there, man. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Man, not a problem. The pleasure is all mine, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. Good to talk to you on Sunday. We finally got connected, and we've been playing a little tag. My fault. So it's good to finally do this together.
I know. I was picking with my my instructor. I was like, man, some about these Jumbo brown black belts, man, I just cannot keep up with.
I got two schools. I've got a wife, 4 kids, a mother-in-law that lives at home. I still work a corporate job on top of the school, so I struggle to keep in front of everything. So apologies that I, may messed up your chi a little bit.
Oh no, it's fine. It's just I had an interview with oh my god, I'm gonna be so mad at James Woodfield Jones.
Oh, he's out in Australia. Yeah, I talked to him and his wife online pretty frequently. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah, we were supposed to do an episode last year.
Really?
And we just kept, every time something came up, it was like he had to reschedule or time was mixed up. And then I was like, all right, dude, I'm asking you again. He's like, yeah, man, for sure. And we scheduled it. I forgot what happened, but we finally got it done a couple of days ago. So it was pretty.
Oh, really? Just recently?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Good. I'll have to tell him I did this too. That's a hoot, because we talk online through Facebook IM, here and there. And, when I see Professor Morera, I ask how often he gets out to see him. And I think he was supposed to go see him like 2 years ago, just before COVID hit, and he couldn't because, the travel restrictions. So I think he ended up getting I think he got his 4th degree recently, but he had to do it, kind of remotely. So, but it's amazing that we have affiliations all over the world. And to talk to some of these guys, it's awesome.
For sure, because I talked to, now you, obviously my instructor, talked to James, I talked to Michael Jen, I talked to, oh my God, what is his name? I just talked to him. Why I can't remember his name?
It's all good.
Donnie Franks, there we go. Danny Franks was another one. Donnie Franks was another one. Another Joe Black belt I talked to. So,
well, it's an amazing thing that you're doing, and I love the fact that you're trying to bring awareness to not only our lineage, but the martial art in general. And I think it's a great thing for community outreach. So kudos to you that you're doing this, and all the other things you're doing with your art. I think it's pretty amazing. So it's really happy. I'm really happy to just kind of be a part of it and speak to you tonight.
Man, thank you very much, man. But without further ado, let's get it rocking, man. You want to if you want to formally introduce yourself again, by all means, and let's hear about your jiu-jitsu journey.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Chris Leonardo. I'm a Joe Morera black belt. I own 2 academies in New Jersey. One's in Bernardsville, New Jersey. The other one's in Morristown. I recently purchased the Morristown location in October when I was approached by a gentleman that said his school was closing down and wanted to transplant 10 or 15 students over to my Bernardsville location. And, just over some conversations, I was looking kind of to expand and didn't want some people to lose their homes. So I negotiated with the previous owner, and I picked up the second school in Morristown in October, beginning of November of 2022. So, really blessed. I've got in excess of 130 students between the 2 locations. I've got a great flourishing kids program. I have a really broad adult program, and outside of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I offer our proprietary self-defense system that my teacher of over 20 years created, called Siljando Tactical Self-Defense. We also offer Muay Thai kickboxing. We have a traditional ring Muay Thai crew. I'm a crew also in Muay Thai. So we do Muay Thai during the week, and then we have a MMA on the weekends where we kind of put everything together. So we have a really nice program, and I'm all about building community around the school. My philosophy has always been a dojo should be a place where families can come and join together and fellowship, and obviously learn something of great utility that can carry them through the balance of their life. So I'm very much about the community, and I'm very much in the Joe Moreira old school jiu-jitsu grain, where we teach jiu-jitsu for self-defense, not for sport. So everything I do in terms of my jiu-jitsu programs is built around what could happen to you out in the street. It's funny, I'll just as a joke kind of have my students on the floor and say, hey, by a show of hands, who plans on fighting in the UFC? And miraculously no one raises their hand. So I know what people are looking for, and I also know that jiu-jitsu is not the whole answer, right? You have to be well-rounded in terms of what your capabilities are to defend yourself on the street. So I take that approach, whether you're taking a self-defense class or a jiu-jitsu class. We start with someone trying to punch you or grab you, and how do you utilize your body mechanics and controlling distance and space to create control and compliance and free yourself of a dangerous situation. So for me, jiu-jitsu is very much about conflict avoidance and situational awareness, self-escape, and then, last but not least, self-defense. So, I try to build a very pragmatic and, practical approach to self-defense, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a very large component. So that's kind of what my broad stroke is with regards to my martial arts philosophy. In my history, kind of goes back to 1990. So I can tell you a little bit about, my whole martial arts history into jiu-jitsu, if you care to hear about it.
Of course, that is what we're here for.
All right, great. So, I was that geeky kid who was bullied starting in 6th grade. I had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. There was three boys that, just bullied me pretty harshly and belittled me. And I dealt with that through, the last 3 years of grammar school. And, in 8th grade, I finally stood up to one of the three guys, and lo and behold, they left me alone. So my first day of high school, I went to an all boys Catholic high school. My mother literally dressed me up in a 3-piece suit and gave me a briefcase. And I get on the bus, and guys in the back of the bus are like, hey, it's Arsenio Hall, hooting and hollering at me. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be that guy that ends up in the locker, and just, stuffed in there with my lunch. So I knew going to high school, just, I was going to probably face some similar problems that I did in grammar school. So I joined the wrestling team, and I wrestled for 4 years, and I got really scrappy. I had a sadistic wrestling coach that put me through hell, but, really toughened me up. I was a decent wrestler. And then graduating from high school, I went away to the Navy and started some judo classes, continued wrestling, and I just really fell in love with martial arts and what it did, not only for my self-confidence, but the gift it bestowed upon me to be able to defend myself and change my whole life from the guy that was being bullied to someone that is called a sleeper. I'm a smaller person. I'm 5'6". I'm 145 to 155 pounds, depending on what time of year it is and what I'm doing. So I've always been the smaller guy, and martial arts in so many ways has saved my life. So I'm eternally grateful to it. And once I learned its real power, and it's not just, your ability to defend yourself and the physicality of it, it's the confidence unlocks in you, the humility that it creates, the mindset, all those things. It's, I'm wholly married to it and grateful to it. So, when I really just started discovering its power at the end of high school and in college, I decided, this is what I want to, be the primary driving force in my life. So I started looking for a school that was really going to teach me how to fight. And I joined a traditional Taekwondo school. And my very first night of sparring, we were like in full head to toe gear, pads. And, you throw a punch at me, I throw a punch at you. And, we were playing a game of tag. I was like, my gosh, I'm never really going to learn to defend myself. So I started looking for another school, and I found my teacher, who again still teaches me to this day. He's a 5th degree black belt under Professor Moreira, Professor Richard Rosidi. He's been training me for, like I said, over 20 years. So I've gotten all my belts, whether it's in Siljindo, Muay Thai, and right up until my promotion to black belt under Richard Rosidi. And from day one, we were really taught to, what real mixed martial arts looks like and how to defend ourselves. So a big part of our curriculum, around 2006, we all started studying jiu-jitsu together. And he was doing a lot of privates before me, and progressed, obviously faster than his students. And we all, came to understand that we were primarily a stand-up school. Some of us had submission grappling and wrestling behind us, and catch wrestling, but never really saw and understood the power of jiu-jitsu till around 2006. So we all started studying it together. Professor Rosidi obviously progressed faster than us, like I said, and I began studying jiu-jitsu then, and got my black belt in September of 21. I was that guy who fell victim to the blue belt curse. So I was dropped off the mat for a minute, and I warn everybody that it's real, because it really happened to me. It took me 14 years to get my black belt in jiu-jitsu because of, the things that happen, your life, your family, my kids, jobs, all that stuff. So that happened to me. And we were living down in Florida when I kind of fell into the blue belt curse. And I'll tell you a funny story. I was training privately with some professional fighters down there, and I went to their gym, shortly after moving down there. And I'd, probably been off the mat for a year and a half at this point, and I still had my blue belt. And I got on the mat with them, and was getting destroyed by their white belts. And I just hear guys whispering in the background, like, this dude's a blue belt, like, really? And it's heartbreaking, it's completely heartbreaking. So that's what kind of got me back on the saddle. And my wife and I, with our kids, we moved back up to New Jersey in 2017. I started, I hooked back up with my teacher, Rich Rosidi, started teaching at his academy, and he's in his early 60s now. And a couple of years ago, he came to me and said, Chris, my body's hurt, and I don't know if I want to do this anymore, full time with teaching. Do you want to purchase the Bernardsville location from me? And I was, let's go. So, that's kind of what happened there. I kind of fell into the opportunity, and it was given to me by my sensei, and I'm eternally grateful for it. And we've been able to build this wonderful community, in our area that's, offering real world martial arts. It's practical, and it's, not driven by ego. It, really takes into account who you are as a person in terms of your side, your physicality, what you're capable of, what your weaknesses and strengths are. And people value that. And I've just been, again, just hugely blessed to be able to work within the community and, share martial arts with people.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Well, at least you came back, right? At least you didn't retire at blue belt.
No, and a lot of people do. My daughter is going to be 17. She's a blue belt under me, and I was like, be very careful after you get your blue belt. What you get involved in, because it's real. And she met her first boyfriend a month after getting her blue belt, and I haven't seen her lately. So, I'm working on it, but that type of thing really happens. Life, life kind of sneaks up on you. And I think at blue belt, people, you understand, as a brown belt, by blue belt, you've got some real skill. There's expectation that at blue belt, you can handle yourself in most situations. And I think people find comfort in that, and then that's enough for them. And they kind of just go forward from there, not realizing it's, not something that you could just walk away from. Those skills have to constantly be, honed and maintained. So, but it's real. And I'm glad I came back from it as real. Yeah. And I'm grateful for coming back for it. And, I had some good people that kind of help pull me along and challenge me along the way. So, that's the other thing. It's, you learn a lot of humility about life and about the martial art. And, you just can't do it on your own. The life is about us lifting each other up. And I think you learn that when you're in a real jiu-jitsu community. We're there to edify each other and lift each other up. And I think that's like one of the most remarkable things about the power of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm sitting here listening to you, your story, and you mentioned your instructor, Richard Rosidi.
Yeah.
And I said, wait a minute. I'm like, I've heard that name before. So I'm looking, I'm like, oh, I sort of did an episode with him too.
Did you really?
Yep.
Are you supposed to do one, or you have done one with him?
So I was supposed to do one with him back on the 16th. And I think what ended up happening was I ended up double booking him by mistake. So I was like, hey, is it possible we can, switch it over to another day? And he was like, yeah, I'll check, I'll let you know. And I messaged him like earlier in the month, and I was like, hey, are you still available? And I never heard back. So
I talk to him every day, sometimes twice a day. So I'll tell him that you and I, we jam together, and he'll be a hoot on your show. He's a very interesting fellow. I'll leave it at that. You guys can have the conversation, but you'll have a good time with him. I guarantee.
Man, you joke black belts, no. Cannot keep y'all down. Y'all are y'all instructor for real. Like we just cannot track y'all down for nothing.
We're elusive. Man. We're supposed to be elusive as black belts. We gotta be careful not to be caught so easily. Especially from right? you hungry brown belts and purple belts. You all come at us hard. I'll tell you, man, I'm 47 years old. I turned 47 March 12th. And, I'll thank you. The point of the story is that I will get really bad sciatic pain from I'll teach, call it Delihiva, and I'll be bent over, and I'll have really bad back pain from it. And I've had to have that realization that I'm not getting younger, and it's actually had to change the way I approach martial arts and how active I am. But, the reality is my students are younger and stronger, and they're getting better every day. And I'm getting older, and, I have to recognize that. So it's a real struggle when you get to black belt level to balance between keeping things in order within your academy and everybody knowing that, there's a hierarchy in leadership, and you have to demonstrate that through your ability sometimes, right, in your actions, and also preserving your body so you could do this for a long time. And, I tell everybody, whether you're young or old, it's important to let your injuries heal and take time to rest, right? Our bodies need to rest. And sometimes you forget that as a business owner and an instructor. And that's been one of the great lessons lately as a school owner and instructor, is that I'm not Superman. And as much as I want to be that young guy, I'm not anymore. And I have my students that I'm responsible to, and I have to remain uninjured because of it. So it's been an ego check for me, realizing that I'm starting to have my limitations. And it's a credit to these guys like Professor Morera and my teacher, Rich Rossetti, who've been doing it for, 40, 50, 55, 60 years, like Francisco Mansour. I mean, these are legends and absolute beasts of men, that they continue to do this after all the punishment their body's gone through. So it's amazing.
First, yeah, it's definitely amazing. It's one of those, those motivational type things, because, meeting Joe Moera for the first time, it was like, about it from UFC and whatever. And it was just like, man, it's crazy that he's at, the age that he's doing this, and and it's like he's not slowing down.
No, and he's scary. He's still scary,
And then meeting Grandmaster Mansour, that was a trip in itself. Because we my instructor was like, we're having Master Joe Moera's instructor come out, Grandmaster's like, okay. So when I first met him, he comes in, and he has on like a varsity sweater and sweatpants. He looked like an old guy,
Yeah, sure.
So he comes in, he's like, a little hunched over, he's walking, and I'm just looking to myself like, he's going to teach? So I'm like, okay, I'm curious to see how this goes. So he goes in my instructor's office, comes out, put on this, his white gi, grab that red belt, and he turns into a whole nother person.
That's cool. That's cool to hear that.
Doing sidewinder snakes and everything under the sun. And I love telling this story because it's like I don't know, I felt like it was like a rite of passage for some odd reason.
Sure.
So we're all, he's teaching, we were going over like a few leg locks. And obviously, he don't know nobody's name, so he just called him belt color. So he's like, you white belt, come over. So I run over. I'm like nervous, like, okay, what else would I do?
It's like meeting Tom Hanks or somebody, right? It's like there's You're starstruck. It's wild, right?
Right. So I'm like, okay, so he's in my guard, he's talking, and was not expecting it. So he pushes his weight forward, he hops up from his knees to his feet, hops up, boom, fall backs to a leg lock. And everybody, including me, was like, ooh. Cause I'm like, how is this guy this age moving like this? That's the only thing I was thinking about. Forgetting that my leg is being,
right, ripped off your body. Like it's being ripped off my body. You might be losing an ankle.
So I'm sitting here stunned, and I'm like, I feel like, why is my knee burning? And I was like, oh snap! And I tapped, and everybody looked like, you good? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. But it was just amazing to me to see him move like that.
Yeah, man, awesome. I totally understand that. Marrero will do like privates for some of the students when he gets there, and when it comes to visit my school. So I'll sit in and watch because I always pick something up, and it's a good way for me to learn some teaching techniques. But in his real heavy accent, he calls me over and he says, "Get in my guard," and I get in his guard. He's like, "Okay, pass." I'm like, all right. So I'm just going to do, I'm not going to embarrass myself in front of Joe Moreira. I'm just going to do traditional angled guard pass, like Jiu-Jitsu 101, keep it simple, keep it old school. And I going through the motions, I start coming through the pass, I get far side underhook. And next thing you know, I'm floating on a cloud. Like, I don't even know. I don't know how I'm up in the air, but somehow I'm up in the air in my back, and I'm Joe Moreira's shins behind my back, and I'm floating on a cloud, laying on my side, and he's in side control, and I don't even know how I got there. And it's like and it's like, okay, right? Like I'm an ant, and this guy is just the dude that with the magnifying glass is going to burn me whenever he wants. And it's just there's such a difference in level. And it's like you think about it, and this now too. Like you get a new white belt in your school, they look at you like you're a wizard. You're Gandalf.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even know how these things happen to them. And you get to the level where we're brown and black belts, and we're like, we understand that what that is for a white belt. And the reality is that's what it's like for like the Joe Moreiras and Professor Mansours when they roll with their brown and black belts. It's just there's so much knowledge to be had. It's incredible.
Yeah. Because when I took a private from Joe as a blue belt, and it just changed my whole perspective with jiu-jitsu, like as a whole. He was like, what you want to work on? And I was like, I think I said escapes from bottom. He's like, oh, okay.
I can hear the voice.
We get on the mat. He's like, okay, show me circle snake. I'm like, all right. So I'm showing him the circle snake, and I'm like, he's breaking it down. But when he goes into when he's going into detail about stuff, and it's just the simple things that he changes to make a one technique seem like unbeatable.
Yeah, it's wild, right? Just a little change of his body movement.
Right. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. Like, just we went over circle snake the whole hour, and it was like it felt like I never learned how to circle snake until that day.
Yeah, he was at the academy because he went to Israel just a few weeks ago to see one of the schools out there, and he had a layover in New Jersey. So I got a phone call and asked if he could come to the school and stay there for 10 hours so he doesn't have to sit at the airport. I was, of course, and we'll get a few people together. I'll get a few people together. We'll have just an impromptu seminar. So we it was like the day of I found out. So I got what I could together. We had like 10 students come to it, but during the course of the seminar, he ruined my whole jiu-jitsu life. He's got back on someone. He's like, I don't even put my hooks in anymore. I'm like, wait, what? Like,
man.
Yeah. He's like, I'm like, you don't use hooks when you have someone's back? He's like, no, there's no need to use hooks anymore. I'm like, what? He starts showing me techniques without hooks. I'm like, what is happening? Like my whole brain is being short circuited, right now. Like my whole life I've been told, like, you take someone's back, you put your hooks in, right? And now Joe Moreira is sprinting in front of my students, and he's telling me, don't put your hooks in when you have back on somebody. And I'm just like, my jaw drops. Like, I don't know what to do, So like every time I see the man, I learn something that I haven't learned before. And it totally flips the script on me. So I get it. And I've been playing without my hooks in lately. And I think the thing that I've learned in terms of jiu-jitsu is we are Joe Morera black belts, or we're Joe Morera affiliates, but I think that the lesson that we all learn on our jiu-jitsu journey is we're also, obviously our own person, and our game has to develop and be built with certain principles in mind. And you hear Joe talk about the principles, right? And following our principles. And I think that's the key. We follow our principles, but at the end of the day, it's very much about self-expression, and we have to have those honest conversations with ourselves about techniques that work for us and those that don't. So, as much as Joe Morera may say, I don't fight with my hooks in, maybe that's true, but maybe I also have to look at it and say, is that right for Chris Leonardo? Because, Chris Leonardo is not a hulking monster like Joe Morera.
He's not built like a Joe Morera.
Right. Like I'm not the gorilla here. I'm the monkey, and I'm like that skinny white guy, and I like it, I'm small, and I have to be honest with myself about what my body's capable of, and that's very much, and I tell this to my students a lot. It's very much, the making of a wise martial artist when you realize that about yourself. I teach a lot of self-defense, and I'm not going to teach a woman who's 103 pounds, 4'11", to engage with a person that outweighs her by 75 pounds, whereas I might teach someone that's 190 pounds to engage differently than that female. And I think having that realization and those real conversations about what we are and how we're shaped and what we're capable of makes us better martial artists, because then we know how to engage and when to engage and when not to, and I think that's what gets us home safe at night, as being honest with ourselves. And I have these epiphanies when I have a Professor Morera come through, and I learn all these new things. But what I take away all the time is that, I have to ask the questions of, does it work for me? And will it work for the other people? And I have to augment how we do things and what we do in lieu of that. So that's it's always a good reminder when my teachers come through that, there's principles to be followed, but at the same time, you have to understand your student and yourself and work around with, within those constructs.
Right. Yeah. Like it's because he's, like we said earlier, his game is always evolving. I can't tell you how many videos I've seen Joe taking one of his rules or snakes that he's embedded in us and added like 50 more. But it's all just small variations of what we already did. But it works.
Yeah, it does, and totally. And he comes to my school. He says the same thing every time. Before we get into the nooks and crannies. But he'll talk about principles, the 1 through the 5s. Your feet, your shins, your hands, your forearms, your shoulders. All those lines of defense and how to control space. It's those types of things you can hear a million times over, and they're always going to have great value. So, and I think that's the thing I love most about our association and our heritage, is that it's simple and efficient. I don't think you're going to see Joe Morera very often throwing like an inverted guard or, a Baron Bolo. He's, like you're not going to see that. And, there's good reason for it, and, on the street, a double leg takedown looks great when you have mats underneath your knees, but double leg takedown might not be the right thing if you're on the street. Maybe you shouldn't even lower your level like that when you're on the street. And Professor Morera recognizes that, and a lot of what he teaches and he's built around, he'll tell you when he's on top of you and he's got his arms wrapped around your neck. He goes, one move I'm going to teach you is to kill, and the other one's for sport. And he knows the distinction, and he'll show you, what you need to do when your life depends upon it. And I love that side of our heritage too, because you'll hear people like Hickson Gracie, he's really upset with the jiu-jitsu community about how sports oriented it's become. And, I'm very much of that grain. I think it's our responsibility to not allow our martial art to become watered down to the extent that it loses its utility and its worth. And, that we're in danger of that. I really believe that. And I'm not apocalyptic in that, but I really believe that, we're responsible to our students and our communities, and we should be making sure as instructors and practitioners alike that what we're propagating is real and it can save you in a time of need. You know, I never want my students to have a false sense of security. You know, that's a sin in my book as a teacher, to give your student a false sense of security, and God forbid they ever have to use this in a real life situation. It fails them, you know. Then I failed them, and I've been in enough street altercations to know that it's scary, it's emotional, it's messy, and you know, those are hard things to prepare people for. You know, violence is real, and unfortunately, we as a society, we live too vicariously through our devices, and we don't understand, you know, what real violence looks like. And I think jiu-jitsu, because of the way it's built, when you roll and you roll right to submission, it gives the practitioner a really good sense of what it means to be in a precarious situation, and also have power over somebody where they could really hurt someone. And you learn pretty readily the emotional components that are involved in having to harm somebody. And it's, you know, I think that's a very powerful tool that jiu-jitsu has in its toolkits that, you know, other martial arts doesn't have. And I think that's, you know, one of the biggest things I'm fond of with jiu-jitsu is that you can go 100% and know what it's like to get to that point where you're about to go to sleep or have your arm broken, and you go home safe at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I love about our system. And it's like a breath of fresh air, because you were saying, like, you know, how, I guess you want to say, how watered down jiu-jitsu has become over the years, and how it's more sport than martial art. And it's always a breath of fresh air, knowing that every Moeric person that I've talked to all follow this same structure about how important it is to keep it as a martial art, the self-defense aspect of it. Because a lot of schools don't teach self-defense. They just teach technique. And it's like, well, you have to be able to do this stuff under the pressure of someone actually trying to attack you other than doing jiu-jitsu.
100%. You know, I'll tell my students, like, hey guys, this is a joke in the jiu-jitsu community. A Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt can beat anybody off the street so long as you start on your knees and you high five fist bump. You know, like right. I'm not going to sit on my ass and like try to pull guard on you in the street or butt scoot towards you and try to, you know, get a leg entanglement. Like, that's just not real. And you know, as a school owner, I understand there's safety implications. You don't want people, you know, soto guarding each other all over the place and smashing each other on the ground, right? Like, people need to go to work the next day. But right. At the same time, it's not going to be like a guy pushes you and you get to sit down. Like, someone's going to push you or try to punch you in the face and hit you. And like, you know, what do you do then? You know, Mike Tyson always said everyone has a plan until they get punched, right? They get punched in the face, yep. Right? So, yep. I mean, that's the reality. You could be a great black belt in jiu-jitsu, but have zero clue about how to defend against somebody that's actually trying to harm you from where it's going to start standing. Like, we're not laying in bed together when the fight starts, you know? So, so like, we better not start on the ground when we spar. So, you know, right. And I make sure, like, you know, I go through like a lot of positional strategy with my students, but every so often we have a full week where it's just like, here's a guy going to punch you in the face, or he's going to push you, or try to grab you by a wrist and pull you into a dark alley. Here's what you're going to do, you know? And I think that's super important to make sure we continue. And it doesn't just have to be for jiu-jitsu. Every martial art, you know, should be built around what it was originally intended for, which was for self-preservation for yourself and your family and your country.
Yeah, because I mean, you know as well as I do, like, you know, when we do our test, it's a self-defense portion. You will get punched.
Oh yeah, get kicked. My favorite part.
It's not part of it. I know, right? It's
my favorite part. Yeah, no, part. I tell everyone, and then you're exactly right. My blue belt test, the very beginning of the test, before you go into the jiu-jitsu technique, is someone grabbing you from behind, someone trying to choke you, someone trying to push you, someone trying to take you down. And then after you've done your technique, I have them roll with every single person that showed up for their test for a minute. And then when they're exhausted, they stand up against the black belts and senior belts who have boxing gloves on, and we come and attack you. And you have to get us down on the ground even when you're exhausted. And that's how you earn your blue belt. And it just scales up from there. But, you know, no one gets a belt in my academy or my teacher's academy or a Moreira academy unless they truly have earned it. And I'm proud of that heritage, and I'm sworn to uphold that. And I will to the day I stop teaching and I step off the mats.
Yeah, that's only when I'm on my way to the grave.
Amen. And man, a brown belt is just, a brown belt is such a huge accomplishment, and I know you know that. But just that it's such a great place to be, and everything after. I felt like for me, everything after purple was just an honor. Like I felt by the time I was
Yeah.
a purple belt, I knew who I was as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and everything after this has just been like me, kind of refining and really ingraining some of those principles in my being, and making sure that I'm able to really bestow those upon the newer people. So
Yeah.
it's just awesome.
And it's like, cause like when I started training, it was one of those things where it's like I started, I was kind of into it, but I wasn't, because I've always get into these, I don't know, these weird situations where I get something, I fall in love with it, and then I have to stop for whatever reason. Always happen that way. But this time, started training. I'm like, training. It's okay. Stripes starting to come. I said, okay. Then, tested for my blue belt. And then you hear that saying, like, everybody quits that blue belt. And I saw it a lot. And I'm looking like, oh man, I don't want this to be me. I don't want to fall into that. So I just made sure that I kept going. And then when I got the purple belt, and I'm like, all right, I think I passed the hump, but it's still an uphill battle.
Yeah,
Then,
I think you make it to purple. You like, you're, at least yourself, you've invested too much time at this point. You got to finish what you started.
right. And then when I got brown, I was like, yeah, that's it. I am at the end. It's just nothing but time now.
No, you're circling the airport. That's it. You just
Right,
circling the airport. They're waiting to call your number. That's all. Yeah, that's the purgatory belt. I tell everybody, you're just waiting until someone says, "Yeah, okay, give it to them." Like that's you time served. You really are. I see it in all my students. I've seen all myself. You really, your game is really well developed by the time you're a purple belt, or it should be. And you're very much the same practitioner you're going to be at black belt. There's just refinement and and time, and making sure you've earned your stripes, and gotten sore arms and muscles a little bit more.
Yeah, because like for today, for example, we had open mats, and my instructor was there. And he's usually like, when he comes, he's usually like, working, or he's just moving. But I came in and he was like in his gi. I was like, oh shit. I was like, he's rolling today. No class. I was like, he's rolling today. So he's like, he was like, you still competing? I was like, yeah, I'm still competing. He's like, you doing gi or no gi? I was like, I'm doing both. So we had a good hard roll, no gi. And I'm like, I'm sucking air. I'm tired. He's like, all right, go get your gi. I'm like, oh shit. So I go get my gi, roll with him roll with him again, and I'm dead. I'm like, okay, I'm sucking air hard this time. He's calling somebody else over. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like, no, you gotta get ready. I'm like, okay, if you say so. So
your time's coming. Your time is coming.
Yeah.
Your time is coming, my friend.
It's coming.
I have one of my closest assistant instructors. He's in his early 60s. He's a second brown. And I've been talking with Professor Moreira and Professor Racine. He's gonna be testing in the next couple of months. But
nice.
I tell him all the time, be ready. Just be ready, because doesn't matter what age you are, they're coming for you. They're coming for him too, and it's a beautiful thing, though. He knows what's up, but that's part of that great rite of passage, and I wouldn't want it any other way for myself or for anybody. I want it to be memorable, and for my students and for you too. You walk away from your black belt test and they tie that on you for the first time. Beyond a shadow of a doubt everything that you put in to get there. And it's it might be 2 inches of material around your body, but there's just so much behind that.
So
that
much
story.
Significance and story. So much story behind it, man. Even as a brown belt, it's still
sure.
it's so it's so much history and so much story, so much blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice, and I don't know, maybe because I've been training so long. It's only been it'll be 6 years in May, but
That's great, man.
I'm like the old guy in the old guy on his porch, like, stay off my lawn type deal when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Like like I don't play, man. I take it very serious, man. And
well, yeah, man, you have a podcast on it, like what greater passion can you have? I think this is a brilliant forum, and I total kudos to you, dude, that you're doing stuff like this. This is a great way to build awareness, and I think the world needs jiu-jitsu. I tell people all the time.
Yes, all the time.
All the time. It doesn't. I'm proudly part of an NPO called Adopt a Cop. So I train police officers for free until Blue Belt. It's a great nonprofit organization, and I got to tell you, what I've learned in terms of how poorly funded our police departments are, and what that translates to in terms of the type of police officers you get. These poor guys are afraid because they have no training. And I'll have police officers come into my school, and I've quite honestly thrown a punch at one of them, and they've turned their head and offered me their sidearm out of fear, just no training. And I see the difference between guys that continue to train with me and get to that blue belt and those that don't. And it's a changed person by blue belt. And I, it doesn't matter if you're a police officer, a doctor, garbage collector, race, religion, creed, color. You come on the mat at a legit place, you're all treated the same, and you're all made to go through the same things. And the world needs more than that, more of that than anything, in my opinion. And I think that's what's been my saving grace, is that I know I can go to a place, whether it's my school or another jiu-jitsu school, and everyone's treated the same way. It's you could go to a jiu-jitsu school in Mr. Woodfield's part of the world in Australia or Poland or
right,
and you're gonna be treated the same way, and that's, to me, what a real community should be about, a global community. And I'm so proud to be part of a community that accept people just the way they are and gives them something that stays with them their entire life. It's the gift that keeps on giving. You can't put a price tag on being able to defend yourself, or the mental health or the physical fitness that jiu-jitsu and martial arts as a whole affords the practitioner. There's no price tag you can put on it.
No price tag, man. No price tag at all.
Nope.
But I have to ask you this, because I ask everyone who's who's affiliate of ours.
Sure.
How long did it take you to speak Joe?
To actually have a conversation with him?
Understand what he's saying.
So have you ever heard the Edgy Bra story?
I don't think so.
All right, so let me tell you the Edgy Bra story. So for those people who are listening or will listen, there's no tournament system in the United States if it wasn't for Joe Moreira. So I'll tell you the Edgy Bra story real quick, and you can look this up.
I know the story, but I didn't know the name of it. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll tell it, and maybe I'll get in trouble with Professor Moreira for it. But it goes to speak about understanding Professor Moreira and his thick accent. So if people know anything about our heritage, you'll know that Professor Moreira was a bit of a renegade when he gave Marco Ruiz a black belt in jiu-jitsu, because Marco Ruiz was a judo black belt. And at the time, judo was kind of the sworn enemy of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, specifically Gracie jiu-jitsu. So it was a big scandal when Professor Moreira moved to the United States and gave Marco Ruiz, who was a judo practitioner, a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And then, the UFC legacy grew from there. But in lieu of all that, Professor Moreira also started to open up tournaments in California, if I understand it correctly. And at one of his very first tournaments was Eddie Bravo. And Professor Moreira is doing roll call for the people in the tournament and goes, "Edgy Bra." And some dude hits Eddie Bravo and goes, "I think that he's calling you." And sure enough, Professor Moreira was trying to say Eddie Bravo, and he just said edgy bra. So I mean, you look up Rogan, you see the story. So to answer your question, still to this day, I have some difficulty understanding him, but you do enough seminars with them, like you get a good understanding. And I got to tell you, I had the honor the very first time I met Professor Moreira to drive him back to the airport from my school. I never had spent any significant time with him, and he tapped me on the car ride to the airport. And he looked at me and he made me look him in the face. He says, "Listen to me." Of course, you're going to listen when an 8th degree coral belt tells you to listen to him. And the guy could break my neck with one finger. So I was like, of course I'm going to listen to you, And he says, jiu-jitsu will make you a better man, husband, and father. That was the very first thing he told me about jiu-jitsu. And that's who Professor Moreira is. Professor Moreira, jiu-jitsu is life. And everything that he does, he looks at through jiu-jitsu lenses, and he believes it with all his heart that it has made him the man that he is today. And I see it, and I try to live by his example, and I always try to honor jiu-jitsu and his lineage, just for the simple conversation that we had. Like, we could have talked about anything, right? But he talked to me about the importance of being a better man. And if that's not a microcosm for what jiu-jitsu and martial arts should be for us, then, why are we doing it?
For sure. Yeah, like I mean, those are words ring true, man, because, I was sometimes sit back and imagine, like, man, where would I be if I didn't have jiu-jitsu?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then, I think about like the stuff that I was dealing with before I started doing jiu-jitsu, and even after I started jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, if life went the same way, but I did not have jiu-jitsu, it'd have been a totally different story, man. Horrible ending. Horrible ending, man.
I agree with you too. So despite the fact that it's hard to understand them, despite that, there's a lot of good lessons to be learned. But yeah, I feel you that, I warn my students, I'm like, listen, it's going to be a little bit difficult in the beginning, but watch, and I guarantee you're going to learn one or two things that are going to absolutely blow your mind. And that's true. Like, jiu-jitsu is very much a language in and of itself. You know what I mean? Yeah. And once you start learning the ABCs, you start seeing things and they start clicking. So, sometimes even if you can't understand them, you can still just, you pick something up just by watching. Right.
And we, because I still remember the first time I had this conversation with my instructor, Zach. This was before his black belt test, and he was like, yeah, my instructor Joe Moreira is coming out. He's gonna do a seminar, do my black belt test, blah blah. And we're like, okay. He gave us that disclaimer. He's like, let's let you know, Joe taught himself English. So when he talks, just listen very carefully. And he's explained, like, because they don't say they don't say R's over there. It's it's pronounced with an H. Yep. So there's all these other lingos and stuff. So when he first came, he introduced himself, that thick accent, and it's like, man, like, what is he saying? Because he was like, you could throw the elbow, and we like, the heck is a elbow? Or you can throw these, or you could control this potch. We like, potch? Like, what? What is he talking about? And he's because like when Joe gets excited, he talks, but he growls and grumbles and everything. So you really don't understand what he's saying.
Oh, man, it's a good time. It's a good time.
But after so long, after talking to him so much, watching his videos, when he did the seminars and everything else, it's I'm not gonna say it's a running joke, but it's a thing that we do at school. Like when I'm teaching or my instructor teaching, we'll imitate that stuff. Like, okay, you can throw this potch to the leg, or you control the elbow, or you can throw this, or you do this. But it's like, but I
do very bad Joe Moreira impersonations. My teacher Richard Rossetti, I hope you do get him on. Like, he does a good Joe Moreira. But yeah, it's kind of like that unsaid thing, and I hope this doesn't get propagated amongst the community, and he shows up at my school and like puts me to sleep, for it. But it is what it is, right? It is. Right. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Like, I told this story, and I wonder if this happened to you, or have you seen this before when it comes to Joe? I think I was still a blue belt, and we was going over guard passes. and he was going over bulldog. You know, when you walk your hands forward, you kind of like fold them in half, right?
Yeah.
We're working the technique.
He likes to smash.
Yeah, he that's his thing.
Oh yeah, he likes to smash.
He's working. We're working a technique, and I think someone asked him a question. And I was sitting there, and I was the uki for the second part for the demonstration. So he goes, he's explaining it, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Boom, hops up, cross forward, and now at this point, all of Master Joe's weight is on me, and I'm folded in half, right? And I'm like, okay, this is very uncomfortable, but maybe he's gonna go. He's going to pass or he's going to, whatever. Someone asks him a question and he completely pauses and answers his question.
Right on top of you, right? You're getting, you can't breathe, right? You're seeing your life flash before you.
I'm slowly fading. My legs and arms are up like this. I'm slowly fading. Like, oh, please hurry up. I'm like, I can't tell. Like, hey, Joe, can you please move? I'm just gonna take it. But I'm like, okay. But he eventually moved. He's like, okay. I'm like, yeah. It's just a minute.
Yeah, and you're not small either, right? Like
no, I'm not. I think when around that time I was like 240, like 245. So, and I wasn't that flexible as I'm more flexible now, but back then, oh no, that was torture.
Right. Your hamstrings are being ripped out of your body.
This was involuntary yoga at its finest, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he'll do that, and he'll get on those those technical roads. He'll go down and discuss with you, and yeah, he'll sit on top of you and squeeze the life out of you at the same time. I'll never forget one of the first seminars I attended. He was teaching a cross collar choke from guard, and my professor Rich Rosides in his guard, and I'm sitting behind Rich, and I just see Moreira throw it on, and my professor's head go like limp, and then Joe reaches up and starts slapping in the face. He goes, no, not going to sleep yet, Richard. He choked out my professor, like just demonstrating, and my professor comes through. He goes, what just happened? We're like, sir, you went to sleep. He goes, that was sublime. Like like he didn't even know he went to sleep. And it happened so quickly, but he literally was slapping him in the face and go, no, Richard, not yet. So yeah, I've been there when that type of stuff has happened, right? You live for that. You live for those stories. That's like, yeah, I saw my professor get choked out by Joe Moreira just for fun.
Moments like that, everybody don't get, man.
Let's go.
All right, Chris, man. So our Talk Your Jits podcast question for you. I asked everybody this.
Sure.
Your top 3 people, man. Who would you like to roll with?
Wow.
Yeah.
Khabib.
Yes.
I'd like to roll with Khabib. It's funny. He's got this move where he'll figure 4 around both your legs and then climb like right up your body to mount.
Mm-hmm.
He's changed my whole perspective on guard passing. I used to be like a big like double underhook guy or try to do an angled guard pass, but most of the time now I'll wait for a guy to open up his guard and maybe engage for like call it a scissor sweep, and I will just lace my arms through, flatten my body out, figure 4 down by the ankles, and climb up their body. I have such a high percentage of success. So I thank Khabib for that. I learned it from watching his UFC fights, and I think he's just he held himself really honorably throughout all the kind of the quote unquote verbal abuse that he took, and the things that were said about his wife. He was honorable, and he handled his business in the ring. And guys like that, I have a lot of respect for. So yeah, I'd say I'd want to roll with Khabib, and then if size wasn't an issue, then I'd probably want to go against like a Dan Severn. Just old school Dan Severn. I've trained with Dan Severn in the past, and like he's one of those old school great UFC fighters that just was there back in the day when bare knuckle still and minimal rules, and just absolute legend. So I'd like to get a real good round in with him. And I know it's not necessarily jiu-jitsu, but I definitely like to roll with him. And then, man, I think I think I'd like to experience like maybe an Eddie Bravo or John or a Danaher, maybe.
Danaher, yeah.
Yeah, maybe Danaher. Roll with the professor with Einstein. I don't know. I think Eddie Bravo would be really cool. I think he is a very interesting person. I think his its 10th planet system is really bold. I think he's built a really good brand and name for himself. And on top of all that, he was one of the few guys to be able to engage a Gracie and defeat them. And he was a real pioneer in this, the sport and martial art. And I think he's a great jiu-jitsu practitioner. So yeah, I would say that those would be probably my top three among many others.
Yeah, I know, right? I like asking that question because everyone does that same thing, like, what? So yeah. But yeah, I agree, man. Like watching Khabib in his career, and watching some of his older stuff, and man, his wrestling just is just so next level. Even like as soon even when he's like started in UFC, and how fast he climbed from with technique and control, and it's like, man, like how can someone that tiny be so powerful?
Yeah, man, it's pretty amazing. And I have an amateur record. I did Muay Thai and mixed martial arts, on an amateur level, and did a lot of submission grappling. And I've trained with a bunch of pros. When we were just getting into jiu-jitsu and when UFC was blowing up, we had guys coming in our gym regularly. And I'm talking, trained with Dan Severn 3 times, Bass Rutten, Frank Shamrock, Ken Shamrock, Rich Franklin. Just some absolute legends in the UFC. And to see the difference between an amateur fighter and a professional in any sport it's night and day. You can't even compare the level of training that these people have and the commitment they have to their craft. It's absolutely mind-boggling, and it's humbling to say, there's this whole other galaxy that you don't even really understand out there, and that keeps me humble and hungry.
Yeah, definitely, man, definitely. So, Chris, is there anything else, man, if you got coming up with your school? I don't think you compete, but if you got anybody who's competing that's coming up, we've been events, man. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, I if you live in the area, we'd love to have you come out and check out the schools. Like I said, we're very family centric. I'm looking to bestow real world martial arts for people for self defense. We do tournaments. We're looking to bring a few people to a really great venue called Good Fight. They're all over the country. They're a smaller venue, but they're submission only. So it's a great way for you to kind of not have to learn or hunt for points and get some good experience about what it might be like in a more real world situation. So we do those tournaments. We're looking to do one in April, but yeah, man, I'm just looking to continue to build the community, and however I can get help doing that, I'm appreciative. And I think these types of forums build great awareness. So thank you for giving me your time and for all the missed calls that we have had. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and from the things that you do to provide this to, the people that listen to it. So I again, thank you.
Man, thank you. Thank you, sir. I mean, it's jiu-jitsu, man. So if, anytime I get to sit down and talk to anybody about jiu-jitsu, man, I'll make the time for sure.
That's great. And, you should make it out to New Jersey sometime if you ever do, and come teach and train at the school. And I'll try to do the same if I get to come out to your neck of the woods.
For sure, man. I'm making plans to actually do a little traveling this year, because I've talked to so many phenomenal people in the jiu-jitsu community, and I would love to go visit all these other schools and really expand what jiu-jitsu have done so far for me.
Yeah, I hope this continues to grow and you find other other mediums and other channels where you can kind of grow your podcast. I think it's a great idea, and I wish you all the luck with it.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And that's the end of today's episode. I would like to thank Chris one more time for coming on and blessing us with his jiu-jitsu knowledge. I hope you guys learned something from our experiences. Please go and follow our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube page to stay up to date on all future episodes. This has been Talk Your Jits podcast. Keep rolling, keep grinding, and remember, long live jiu-jitsu. Have a great day. And we're done, brother.